Hello and welcome to the AssemblyTV studio. I'm your host Teppo Isperia Suominen and this is the 1 and 4K compo studio. With me here in the studio are Zerfed, Miss Saigon and Seven Fulcrum. Hello and welcome guys.
Hi.
So 1K, 4K, 13 and 7 entries. What are your overall feels after seeing the compos?
Personally, I was amazed by the quality of the 1K entries. It has really gone a long way during the few years that it has been organized. What are you?
I was amazed by the quality in both of the compos. I really think that it's kind of evolving more toward the artistic side of things. And I think we're starting to see things in the 1K that we've seen before in the 4K, and we've started to see things in the 4K that maybe before we've seen in larger
16K.
Yeah, and there were moments where I had to remind myself that it's a size-limited compo because it's easy to forget with the quality of the entries.
Yeah.
I agree that there were many great entries, and quality is increasing. I think the newest versions of Crinkler may have to do something with that.
Yeah, a lot of Crinkler entries there. I have to agree. I think 3 or 4 used Crinkler at least in the 1K, and 4K had at least 2 entries with Crinkler. Okay, Seven, you actually had your own entry up there. So how do you feel about the overall quality of the competition?
It made me nervous.
A good sign for us as watchers, I think.
Yeah. Some focus more on technical side and some more on music. It's really hard to do both in 1K, obviously. I think one of my favorites was the one in like the moonscape with a very good camera, with like post-processing and realistic camera motions, and that was like, whoa, that's it's a simple scene, but it has an impact.
Definitely. And what Zerfed said about the overall quality going up, we only had one entry with no music, which usually we had almost half of the entries back in the day without music. So sound is definitely entering 1K, or well, more like is here to stay, I would say. So.
Yes, and it was great to see that it wasn't only the low ambient sounds that the demos had, but they actually had actual music tracks in the background.
Yeah, I think
really entertaining.
I think last year it was more the exception that an entry had music. It was really notable if it did have music.
Yeah.
And this year nearly all of them did.
Okay, let's move on to our individual picks. One that we are not going to show but discussed a bit. Number 3, browser WebGL made entry in the 1K. How do you, well, I suppose browser WebGL is a natural place to make a 1K entry, but I think it actually ran on a browser, I was told by the compo crew. I might be wrong, but pretty cool. Seven, how would you feel about making 1K entries, for example, in a browser?
I have very little experience with JavaScript demos or intros. I know that WebGL is a lot pickier about, for example, if you use a floating point number, you have to finish it with a dot or you get an error. So every time I use shader toy, which is WebGL based, I always get errors, and I strongly prefer the more relaxed rules of OpenGL, where you can just abuse rules to just make it smaller. I have no idea how they do the music in JavaScript. It had some pretty good music, I think.
It's actually an excellent question. I was just wondering that, in my opinion, WebGL and JavaScript would be a pretty natural choice, given the fact that we have shader toy and everything nowadays in the internet, and you can go and watch the demos and see what others have made. So, personally, I would be comfortable making a 1K using WebGL.
Okay.
But the music side is actually something interesting. I don't know, how did they handle that?
I'm not sure. I know that ShaderToy does it on the graphic card, but we investigated this, but that's not something you can do in 1K. And for like real executable files, and either you use MIDI or you use some very simple software synthesizer that you write yourself, because Klinkster or Forklang are not going to fit. But for JavaScript, I don't know.
Okay. So we're not completely certain how they made it, but pretty cool anyway. But for our first pick to the studio, we picked entry number 8.
So I think this is the one you were talking about with the...
Yeah.
So
A simple scene with an impact.
very natural look to the very organic feel to the camera work and the style.
And with the music, there's like this dark atmosphere. I really feel like they are trying to make Darkness Lay Your Eye Upon Me 1K edition.
That's a very good point, actually. But beautifully done as a compo entry. Maybe not so technically astounding as some of the other 1K entries, but a beautiful, well thought out piece, an artistic piece, maybe.
Yes, it really, at least for me, gave the feeling of landing on moon or something similar.
Yeah. There were a lot of post-processing. In fact, you have like this noise, and they're vignetting, so like the corners become darker, and the camera, it's not just the usual cine-based camera motion. It's like some bit like handheld. So yeah, they focused on that.
Yeah, I think it mentioned that it was, real camera movements that they used for that, and I'm really curious to know how they did that.
Definitely interesting to know how they input a real motion into an executable. Maybe a motion, no, well, you can't do that in 1K, it wouldn't fit. Well, again, I'm flabbergasted by how they fit that kind of things in 1K. Okay, next pick we had number 9. When we discussed these entries, we were wondering how this graphic part was made.
Yes, I was wondering if it was actually some sort of a vector field or something, what they used for the movement of the particles.
I think it's curl noise, which is some kind of vector field that just pushes your particles around. It doesn't look like real fluid dynamics.
Yeah.
There was another, I think in the 4K compo there was an entry with lots of particles, and they move more natural.
Yeah.
Do you mean the last entry?
No. Entry number 2.
Right. Yes, that one.
The one that was basically just particles moving. Very beautifully. The black and white particles.
Was it the milkshake or what was it?
Mansikkajäätelö something. That one. But very beautiful entry. But here again, different kind of movement. So, like you said, probably not fluid motion, but the sound for this entry, I think, was done very well. It was mainly focused on the music side and maybe not so much on the graphics.
Yeah, I think it was really quite well synchronized with the music. You could almost see. I wondered whether the effects were responding to the music, because they matched really well together.
It was one with like this bar of lights. Yeah, that was well synchronized. And then at the end there was also text, which is, I think, fairly unique in the one case, at least ones which are not purely text-based. So there's music and an effect and text. It's like, impressive.
Impressive indeed. Okay, our last pick for 1K, number 11. So, Seven, this is actually your entry. So,
Yes.
We were wondering how is the spaceship made? Is this a technical secret, or can you give us a bit of a peek behind the, under the hood?
I actually wanted to do something without like random looking fractals. I wanted to do something realistic, and I looked at my entry from 3 years ago and decided like, yeah, you can do realistic stuff, and fractals have the property that you have large scale things plus little effects all in one formula. And so I was looking at formulas on the internet, and I saw something, a Mendeley fractal, which is kind of 3D, like the Mandelbox fractal.
Yeah.
In the shape of a castle, they had simply used a height field to limit the volume of the fractal. So I was thinking like, yeah, maybe you can just take two fractals and get the intersection. So the spaceship shape is like this, this disk that is repeated twice for the near the end, and then another 4 times, and then 8 times, and that's intersected with a variant of the Mandelbox fractal.
Okay.
And yeah, that's the shape of the spaceship.
Okay, so just 2 fractals on top of each other.
Yeah, and the background is also a fractal.
Okay, that one we didn't notice because the ship really takes all of your notice away. But astounding work. Well, of course, fractals are a very usually used thing in 1K because, well, you need to limit the size somehow, so something repeating is a very good way to do that. But I think that what really makes a 1K entry stand out is if you can make a fractal that the audience doesn't immediately notice is a fractal, that you can kind of hide what you're repeating there.
Yeah.
And yeah, you know you're doing something right when the audience starts cheering in the middle of your entry.
Yeah, but there's at least from my point of view, I don't think many people make a 1K like from scratch. Most people use Crinkler for the compression. There is inspiration from Shader Toy, like the starry background is based on a fractal from Knighty Cosmos, but I found a way to colorize it in just 2 bytes. So everybody stands on the shoulders of the people before them.
And actually another entry that used fractals really well in this competition was the last entry. I can't remember the name, but the box, when it started to break down, it broke down in fractals, but it took me a while to notice because the effect was so well made. So again, another entry that used fractals really well to hide what it was doing with them, which made it a really good looking entry. So a very good 1K competition overall. I'm not sure, no clear winner picks yet. Some very good entries, 13 entries, so very tough competition to come.
Definitely interesting. I like the fact that many of the entries had, well, basically, as we discussed earlier, many of the entries had music which was different from last year's, but I like the fact that each entry basically had something special to emphasize, and they all had their good parts, and it's really interesting to see how it plays out in the end.
1K keeps on impressing, at least me personally, more and more every year. So I keep on expecting it because it's something that, well, it's just astounding what you can do in just 1024 bytes. So, okay, moving on to 4 times more space. So 4K, a bit less entries, only 7, but very great overall quality as well. First pick of an entry that we took for the studio, number 5. So here, I think we all agreed beforehand, a very artistic entry again, something with very clear art direction. which is always nice to see in a demo.
Yes, and the fact that it clearly had an easy story to follow.
And I think it was the only 4K, 1K entry to have greets.
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
At the end, that's a nice touch,
Yeah.
and take some space as well.
Yeah, it's nice to see that you have enough space to actually put in grids there. But the visual style was just, I think, one or two repeating pieces of the same scape, but very beautifully made. Again, something that you didn't really notice because the story and the art style just made you follow it all the way through.
This, for me, was a good example of an entry where it was easy to forget that this was 4K, that, you know, the overall artistic impression of it, it was, it looked like a much bigger entry.
Okay. Another entry that I think did the same for us all, number 7 on the 4K. Okay, at the start here, just you look okay, a bit of particles there.
But very nice post-processing effects. Again, like gives a really nice artistic touch to it.
But I think this was an entry that just kept on surprising. Like, you go like, okay, they've got this. This is pretty cool for a 4K. Okay, they've got this as well. Like, okay, you've got cube, particles, post-processing. Okay, you've got a ball. Okay, you've got...
The tunnel, the great music that just kept going. It's a very impressive entry.
Indeed. So, well, like you said, it had post-processing in it, clearly some sort of...
yes, you could notice basically the overlay, darkened corners and all that stuff.
Yeah. But overall, what was it that made this the pick for us in the studio for you guys?
I think it was the blending effect which was made so nicely. At least for me, it really struck a chord for me when the cube blended into other shapes and the particles and everything flowed very nicely. I think this demo had all the pieces of a great demo in place: music, sync, post-processing, effects, graphics, everything.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty much the same thing. That you know, as a whole. And it's interesting that you called it a demo because we're talking about a 4K intro here. But
True.
you know, the whole production together really worked. It really had good transitions and you know, really smooth production overall.
Okay.
Yeah, I also like the clear colors, like they're not going all rainbow. And yeah, I was wondering if it was a 2D or a 3D effect that they were using to move those particles. If it's some kind of feedback effect, I'm reminded of a certain one of the first demos from Still, I think, was very heavily based on a similar effect. I have no idea if it's the same, but yeah, it looked really great for me.
Okay. Well, like you said, it really seemed like a demo more than an intro. And for me, perhaps the thing that really made it, like you mentioned, the music really fit the demo. I always like a demo that feels like a full story. And even though this demo didn't really have a story element to it, the music made it feel like a full story that you could follow. But closing comments on 1K, 4K, astounding entries all around.
Personally, I think 1K will be a really tight competition. 4K, well, at least for me, there is a clear winner in that category, but it's for the audience to decide, of course.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really hard to pick a favorite in the 1K.
Yeah, I can't be objective about the 1K, but yeah, plenty of very great entries, and yeah, both in the 1K and the 4K. I think that both compos were a very great success.
Okay, so thank you guys for joining me in the studio. We will be moving on with the main event, but thank you for joining me. Thank you for the comments and the discussion. Thank you for watching, and let's head on out. AssemblyTV out.